Rain had poured relentlessly since dawn, as though the heavens shared my grief. I stood motionless, clutching a black umbrella that quivered in the gusts, while the coffin carrying my mother sank slowly into the drenched earth. Everyone around me wept, everyone except my father. He wasn't there to shed a single tear. Instead, he was thousands of miles away in Hawaii, grinning beside his latest lover, their champagne glasses gleaming mid-toast, as if rejoicing in my mother's passing. When the final clump of soil struck the wooden lid, I forced out a farewell between tight lips. That night, thunder rolled over Portland while I sat alone in my apartment, eyes fixed on fading photographs of her. Then my phone vibrated. "I'm not dead. Come to the cemetery, now." The message came from her number, my mother's. My throat locked, and a chill spread through my hands. With trembling fingers, I snatched my keys and ran for the car, pulse thudding wildly. I couldn't tell if I was heading toward a miracle or straight into madness. My name is Grace Miller, and until a week ago, I believed my world was ordinary. I lived in a small apartment overlooking the Willamette River, worked as a freelance designer, and had a mom who called every Sunday just to remind me to eat breakfast. I'd roll my eyes at her texts. "Take your vitamins, sweetheart. Don't skip dinner again." I never imagined I'd long to read them once more. The morning she died began like any other. I was wrapping up a project when an unfamiliar number flashed on my phone. I almost let it ring out, but a strange instinct made me pick up. "Is this Miss Grace Miller?" The caller's voice trembled. "I'm calling from Portland General Hospital. I'm so sorry. Your mother passed away this morning." "Cardiac arrest." I froze. The room spun, the color drained from everything. "No," I whispered, shaking. "You're mistaken. My mom's fine. She was painting today." "I'm sorry," the nurse repeated gently. Her words echoed long after the line went dead. I remember staring out the window, watching the rain carve paths down the glass, my reflection pale as a ghost. My mother, my confidant, my compass, was gone, and still, somewhere deep inside, a quiet voice insisted something wasn't right. She'd never had a single issue with her heart. She stayed active, laughed often, and ate the kind of clean food doctors recommend. How could someone like that simply stop breathing one morning? When I phoned my father, his voice carried nothing but detachment. "It's true," he said without emotion. "Evelyn's gone. The doctor said it happened fast." "That's all?" I choked out, anger mixing with disbelief. "Is that really all you can say?" He sighed. "Grace, she's dead. Cry if you must, but don't make a scene. I'll take care of the paperwork." Then the line went dead. In that instant, grief gave way to fury. Something deep within whispered that my father wasn't grieving at all. He was relieved, and that thought chilled me to the core. 3 days passed, and still the downpour lingered. It felt as though Portland itself refused to forget her. The air at the cemetery was heavy with damp earth and the faint perfume of lilies. People dressed in black huddled beneath umbrellas, murmuring soft condolences that never seemed to reach me. My gaze was locked on the coffin, on the golden letters spelling out my mother's name, Evelyn Grace Miller. My throat ached. "You didn't deserve this," I breathed. Behind me, whispers rippled through the mourners. "Where's Richard? Her husband didn't show?" Shameful. I clenched my hands until they hurt. The night before, my father had sent a message. "Busy with business overseas. Handle the funeral." No apology, no hint of remorse, just business. When the priest began to speak, my legs trembled. My cousin's daughter, little Ava, tugged on my sleeve. "Aunt Grace," she whispered, "if Grandma's in heaven, can she see us?" I crouched beside her, tears catching in my throat. "Yes, sweetheart, she can see us. She's watching right now." A sudden gust turned my umbrella inside out as the casket sank into the ground. The priest's words melted into the steady drumming of the rain. Every drop struck the earth like a heartbeat that no longer answered mine. When everyone else drifted away, I remained alone, kneeling in the mud before the grave. "Mom," I whispered, "if there's any justice in this world, he'll pay for what he's done. I swear it. Lightning ripped across the sky, a sharp white wound against the dark clouds. I took it as a sign. That night, drenched and hollow, I drove home. I showered, pulled on one of her sweaters, and sat in the dark, scrolling through my father's social media. Then I saw it. His newest post. He was smiling on a sunlit beach, an arm draped around a young woman with flawless hair. The caption read, "New beginnings." My chest tightened, and my fingers trembled so violently I almost dropped the phone. While I stood beneath gray skies, laying my mother to rest, my father smiled under a warm sun beside another woman. Something inside me cracked wide open, and in its place, a darker resolve began to stir. That night, sleep refused to come. Every creak in my apartment felt like a whisper from beyond. The storm clawed at the windows, and no matter how hard I tried, I kept seeing my mother's still face inside that coffin, too serene, unnaturally calm. I tried to distract myself by scrolling through old photos. Mom painting in the backyard, laughing with dirt on her hands, showing me how to bake apple pie, wrapping me in her arms after my first heartbreak. Each memory cut deeper than the last. Then the phone buzzed. I almost ignored it. Probably another message from someone offering condolences. But when I saw the sender's name, I froze. Mom, her number, the one I couldn't bring myself to delete. Blood drained from my face as I opened the message. "I'm not dead. Come to the cemetery, now." For a long moment I just stared at the screen, my mind scrambling for logic. A wrong number, maybe. Some twisted prank. But my body had already made the choice. I threw on my coat, grabbed my keys, and bolted into the storm. The rain struck harder now, sharp and deliberate. My wipers struggled against the torrent as I sped toward the cemetery, headlights slicing through the sheets of water. Every instinct screamed to turn around, yet my mother's words echoed in my head. "Trust your heart, Grace, even when your mind is afraid." When I reached the gates, the place was swallowed in fog. The lamps flickered weakly, shadows stretching over the gravestones. I parked, stepped into the wind, and called out, "Mom!" My voice shook. Only the sound of rain answered, until I noticed movement by the willow trees. A small, hunched figure in a soaked coat. "Mom?" I whispered again, raising my trembling flashlight. The beam found her face, pale, fragile, but unmistakably alive. Her hazel eyes shimmered with tears. "Grace," she breathed. My mind splintered into chaos. The flashlight slipped from my grasp, thudding softly into the mud. I stumbled forward, pulse roaring in my ears, unable to believe what I was seeing. "Mom? How are you alive?" She reached for me, her hands icy, but solid. "It's me, sweetheart," she whispered, her voice trembling. "But you mustn't tell anyone I'm alive." Rain lashed down harder, blurring everything until life and death seemed to merge into one. I couldn't stop staring. Her face was pale, almost translucent, hair plastered to her skin, yet her eyes, those familiar hazel eyes, shone with unmistakable life. "Mom," I choked out, "everyone saw you. I saw you. You were gone." She pulled me into her arms, trembling. For a moment, everything vanished. The storm, the grave, the fear. All that existed was the faint rhythm of her heart against mine. Then she leaned close. "Grace, we can't stay here. Someone might see us." We rushed through the rain to a small silver sedan hidden beneath the trees. I climbed inside, shivering. "Mom, please, what's happening?" She didn't answer at once. Her fingers tightened around the steering wheel until her knuckles turned ghost white. Finally, she whispered, "Your father, Richard. He tried to kill me. The air left my lungs." "What?" Her eyes filled with tears. "He isn't the man you believe he is. For months he's been pressuring me, demanding I sign over my shares, the art studio, everything in my name. When I refused, he told me I'd vanish. The words struck like lightning. "That's impossible," I stammered. "He's your husband, my father." Her voice trembled. "He's a businessman, Grace. He sees people only as assets or obstacles. and I stopped being valuable to him. Then she told me about the night she died. She'd been feeling chest pain for days, the stress unbearable. She collapsed while painting. Their housekeeper, terrified, called for an ambulance. At the hospital, my father arrived, not with worry, but with papers. He wanted her to sign them before she was too weak to hold a pen. When she refused, he walked out without another word. But Mom wasn't alone. A former student of hers, Martha, happened to work there as a nurse. Martha had noticed bruises on Mom's arm weeks earlier and had sensed something terribly wrong. "She helped me," Mom murmured. "Martha changed the hospital files, made it look like my heart stopped." The body everyone saw wasn't mine. It was a mannequin. I pressed my hand to my lips. "You staged your death." Tears streaked her face. "It was the only way to stay alive, Grace." Outside, thunder cracked so loudly the car shook. "I thought you'd be safe once I disappeared," she whispered. "But when I saw what he posted, new beginnings, I knew he wouldn't stop. He'll take everything, even you." My pulse thundered louder than the storm. "Then we stop him first." Her eyes widened. "Grace, no. You don't understand what he's capable of." "I do," I said quietly. "That's why we have to bring him down." For a moment, she studied me like she was seeing me anew, not as her child, but as her equal, ready to fight. Then she nodded slowly. "All right. But we have to be careful. No mistakes." The storm began to ease, rain thinning to soft drips from the trees. That was when I realized my mother hadn't died in that hospital. She'd started over, and I was about to follow her. By sunrise, the city felt sharper, colder, as if it knew what I now carried. Sleep never came. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my father's face at the hospital, calm, detached, as though Mom's death had been a business transaction. Mom stayed hidden in a safe house outside Portland. Martha checked in every few hours. I swore not to tell a soul, not my best friend, not the police, not yet, but patience was never my strength. At 8 in the morning, my father called. His tone was smooth, almost cheerful. "Grace, darling, I'm finalizing your mother's estate today. I just need your signature on a few documents." My grip tightened until my nails bit into my palm. "Documents?" "Just routine paperwork," he said lightly. "Nothing to concern yourself with." "Stop by the mansion tonight," I agreed, then sent Mom a text. "He's making his move." Her reply came instantly. "Let him think he's winning." That evening, the home I'd grown up in felt foreign, like a stranger's house wearing my childhood's skin. The house sparkled, polished stone underfoot, glittering crystal above. Yet the atmosphere felt dense and wrong. He greeted me with that practiced politician's grin. "You look tired, Grace. Too many sleepless nights over old things?" "Over dead things," I replied, voice edged. "Or people we're supposed to have lost." He hesitated, an instant of sharp focus in his eyes. "Careful with your words," he warned. We took our seats in his office. He pushed a heavy folder toward me across the desk. "These are transfer forms for your mother's properties. Since you're the sole heir, I need your signature to consolidate ownership. Then we can move forward." I skimmed the documents, pulse racing. My mother's handwriting was on the pages, a flawless imitation. "You forged her signature," I said, looking up slowly. He laughed softly. "You think I need to forge anything? Your mother agreed to this before she passed." I stood. "Strange," I replied, "because I remember her swearing she'd rather burn everything than let you have it." His expression snapped shut. "Sit down. I'm not signing." "Grace," he said in a low voice as he leaned in, "I know you're grieving. But don't make me force you to do what's necessary." That voice, cold and commanding, had haunted my mother for years. My hands shook not from fear, but from fury. "You already killed her once," I told him. He stiffened. "What did you say?" His chair scraped as he rose. "You won't get away with it," I said, locking my gaze on his. A flash of alarm passed over him. He grabbed the folder, breathing hard, and barked, "Get out!" Now. I turned toward the door but caught in the office mirror the glint of a small safe behind his desk, a keypad partly concealed by a family photograph. I let a small smile show. "Sure, Dad, I'll go." That night, sleep eluded me. After midnight, I let myself back into his office with the old spare key I'd kept since childhood. The safe surrendered on the third attempt. Of course, his code was my mother's birthday. Inside lay bank records, movements to offshore accounts, forged agreements, and a lone flash drive. I copied every file onto my own drive and slipped out as quietly as I'd come. By the time I reached my car, my hands were trembling. I texted Mom. "Got it." Her reply appeared almost instantly. "Good, but be careful, Grace. He'll find out." The message had barely sent when another came through, an unknown number. "You think I wouldn't notice, Grace?" The words froze my blood. It was him, my father. The street outside was deserted, just rain, the glow of streetlights, and my reflection shaking behind the glass. My chest tightened. He knew. Then the phone rang. His voice poured through the speaker, calm and composed, too calm. "You were always clever," he said, "but you seem to forget who taught you how to lie." I forced my voice steady. "You don't scare me," he chuckled softly. "Don't I? Come home, Grace. We'll talk. Otherwise, I'll make sure you regret stealing from me." "Stealing?" I shot back. "You mean evidence?" Silence, long, deliberate, suffocating. Then in a low voice, "If you're smart, you'll destroy it. Otherwise, we may need another funeral." The line went dead. For a moment, I sat frozen, watching my pale reflection in the windshield. Then I heard my mother's words echo in my head. "He'll come for everything, even you. Not this time." I drove straight to the safe house. Mom met me at the door, still in her robe, eyes wide. "Grace, what happened?" "He knows," I said, tossing the flash drive onto the table. "We have to move now. These files, offshore accounts, forged contracts, fake transfers, it's all there, enough to destroy him." She stared at the drive, then at me. "If we go to the police, he'll find us before they act." I drew a shaking breath. "Then we'll make him destroy himself." Over the next 48 hours, with Martha's help, we sent the evidence anonymously to the FBI and financial authorities. Mom reached out to an old friend, Charlotte Wells, a lawyer who began drafting a formal statement for when the truth came out. But the storm didn't wait. It arrived ahead of schedule. 2 nights later, a pair of headlights cut through the darkness outside the safe house. Mom lifted the curtain, and her breath caught. "It's him," she whispered. The pounding that followed shook the doorframe. "Grace!" his voice thundered through the wood. "Open up! Let's finish this nonsense." Mom's fingers wrapped around mine, trembling. "Don't!" He's dangerous, but I'd had enough of fear. I pulled the door open. He stood in the rain, soaked to the bone, fury burning in his eyes. His tailored suit clung to him like a crumbling disguise. "Where is she?" he demanded. I stepped into the doorway. "Who, Dad?" "The wife you buried? The woman you tried to erase?" His jaw clenched. "You have no idea what she did. She destroyed me. She loved you," I said quietly. "You destroyed yourself." He shoved past me, shouting her name into the house. "Evelyn!" Mom appeared at the end of the hallway, frail, pale, but unshaken. "I'm right here." He froze. For a moment, even the storm outside seemed to hold its breath. His face drained of color. No, this can't be. You're dead." Her voice was calm, sharp as glass. "You tried to make me dead." He gave a broken laugh, trembling with rage. "You think you can take what's mine? My company, my legacy? You're nothing without me." I stepped between them. "That's where you're wrong." In the distance, sirens wailed, growing louder. His eyes darted toward the window, panic spreading across his face. "What did you do?" Mom didn't flinch. "Exactly what you taught us. Cover the trail. Only this time, you left too many moments later. Red and blue light flooded the house. The front door burst open, and agents stormed in, weapons raised. "Richard Miller," one of them shouted, "you're under arrest for financial fraud, money laundering, and attempted murder." He turned toward me, desperation overtaking arrogance. "Grace, tell them they're wrong. Tell them you—" I met his gaze and shook my head. "You buried the wrong woman, Dad." He lunged forward, shouting incoherently, but agents grabbed him, twisting his arms behind his back. The rain outside swelled into a roar, drowning out everything but the sound of his fury. As they led him out, he threw one last glare at Mom. "You'll regret this," he hissed. She watched him go, voice barely above a whisper. "No, Richard." I already did. When the door shut, the house sank into silence, broken only by the soft drip of rain from the porch roof. I realized the trembling in my hands wasn't from fear anymore, it was relief. Mom collapsed into my arms, her sobs quiet against my shoulder. "It's over," she whispered. I held her close, feeling the pulse beneath her skin, the same heart that was never supposed to beat again. "No," I said softly. "It's just beginning." Outside, the first light of dawn stretched across the soaked earth, erasing the night. For the first time since the funeral, the rain had finally stopped. The following weeks blurred into a storm of news flashes, subpoenas, and headlines. Real estate mogul, Richard Miller, arrested for fraud and attempted murder. Every channel showed his photo, once the charming face of success, now stamped beneath the words, "criminal investigation." Mom and I watched from a quiet hotel room far from Portland, hiding from the noise. She rarely spoke, her hands wrapped around a cup of untouched tea. One morning, she finally said, "When I married your father, I thought he was a man who built things. I never realized he was the kind who destroyed them." I reached across the table and took her hand. "He won't destroy us again." 3 months later, the trial began. The courtroom overflowed with reporters, lawyers, and shareholders who once toasted him but now whispered from the shadows. My father sat at the defense table, his suit wrinkled, hair unkempt, his old confidence gone. He never once looked our way. When my mother took the stand, the room went still. She spoke clearly, every word deliberate, her voice calm but razor-sharp. "I faked my death," she said, "not out of revenge, out of survival." A gasp rippled through the gallery. Pens scratched across notepads. Cameras clicked. She recounted everything, the threats, the forged papers, the night he told her she'd be worth more dead than alive. Not once did she cry. She didn't need to. The truth was heavier than tears. When my turn came, I faced the jury, then looked directly at him, the man I once thought invincible. "My father taught me to be brave," I said quietly, "but I don't think he ever expected I'd use that courage against him." His eyes finally met mine, and for the first time, I saw fear. Not of handcuffs, but of losing control over the story he'd written for all of us. Our attorney, Charlotte Wells, presented the evidence. The bank transfers, the falsified contracts, the recordings between him and my late grandparents. Piece by piece, his empire unraveled, crushed beneath the weight of his own lies. When the jury returned with the verdict, the entire room seemed to stop breathing. Guilty on all charges. He shut his eyes as the words fell, his shoulders collapsing inward. There was no protest, no plea, only silence. The judge's voice rang steady and cold. "Richard Miller, you are hereby sentenced to 30 years in federal prison." The gavel struck, echoing through the courtroom like the final crack of thunder after a long storm. Mom let out a trembling breath, as though she'd been holding it for decades. I reached for her hand, and she gripped mine tightly, tears shimmering but refusing to fall. When the guards led him away in cuffs, he looked back once. For a fleeting instant, I glimpsed the faint trace of the father I had once adored. And then he was gone. Outside the courthouse, flashes erupted, reporters shouting over one another. "Mrs. Miller! Miss Miller! How does it feel to bring down one of Portland's most powerful men?" Mom paused, exhaustion softening her face. A weary smile flickered. "It doesn't feel like victory," she said. "It feels like freedom." By morning, the headlines called her the woman who returned from the dead. But to me, she wasn't a ghost. She was proof that truth, no matter how deeply buried, always claws its way back to the light. Months passed, and still, I woke each day hearing the phantom echo of the gavel. The nightmare had ended, yet its shadows clung. Mom and I moved to the Oregon coast, far from the towers and tension of Portland. She bought a small weathered cottage near the cliffs, a place with cracked white paint and a garden that bloomed like forgiveness. Her days filled with color again. She taught local children to paint, filled canvases with wild daisies, and let the ocean wind dry her tears. One afternoon, I found her by the shoreline, brush poised mid-air. "What are you painting?" I asked. Her lips curved into a soft smile. "Freedom." I opened a small design studio nearby, Evelyn and Grace Designs. It was more than a business, it was a vow. We would create something real, something that could never be bought or betrayed. Life began to settle into gentle rhythms, quiet mornings, sea air, and peace that finally felt earned. But sometimes the past still whispered. Reporters wrote letters. Investors offered money for her story. She always refused. "I don't need to relive it," she'd say. "I just need to live." One golden evening, as the sun sank behind the waves, we sat on the porch together, teacups warm in our hands, the scent of salt and damp earth around us. I looked at her, the question that had haunted me for months, finally surfacing. "Mom," I said softly, "I never asked who sent that text the night you came back, the one that brought me to the cemetery." She turned toward the horizon, her eyes catching the last shimmer of light. "I didn't," she said quietly. I frowned. "What do you mean?" I asked, my brow furrowing. "It came from your number." Mom shook her head. "My phone was off, Grace. Martha took it that night. I didn't have it for a long moment. Neither of us spoke. Only the steady hiss of waves against the rocks filled the silence. A chill crept over me, not from fear, but from something deeper, almost sacred. Maybe fate itself had sent that message, refusing to let a lie stand unchallenged. Mom reached across the small table and took my hand. "Whatever it was," she said softly, "it saved us." I smiled through the ache in my throat. "No, Mom. You saved us." In the fading light, I saw her not as the woman who had suffered or survived, but as someone entirely new. A woman reborn. Later, as I drove home, the sky burned in shades of deep orange, the same hue as her favorite daisies. I rolled down the window, letting the ocean wind rush through the car. For the first time in years, I felt no ghosts trailing me. The truth had freed us. We had lost everything once: money, reputation, even family. But in the ashes, we found something rarer: peace. As the road curved away from the sea, I whispered into the wind, "Good night, Mom." And somewhere in the hush of the waves and the hum of the tires, I could swear I heard her voice again, soft, steady, alive. "Good night, sweetheart." The storm had passed. We were finally home,